Pac-Land is obscure enough in the US that it's easy for someone to not know how important it is. There were earlier games that had characters run and jump through their levels, but Pac-Land was the game that put it all together. It's the first game that's recognizably a platformer. It's the game that Super Mario Bros. Was copying from. And when it came to the Famicom almost a year and a half later, the port was a complete disaster. Games are going to lose something moving from the arcade to the Famicom, especially arcade games that came out after the Famicom was released. But this one feels especially sloppy. This is bad enough that you'd think it was farmed out to one of those houses like Tosei or Micronix, but the information I found is that Namco developed it themselves in-house. Maybe they rushed development to have it out for the end of the year. In Pac-Land, Pac-Man has found a fairy, and he's taking that fairy back to Fairyland. He'll platform through 3 levels to reach Fairyland, and then journeys back home after being given boots that let him jump in the air. Naturally, there are ghosts after him, and in this game, they ride around in vehicles for the most part. They don't really have distinct personalities either in terms of actions they take. The ghosts in Pac-Land have the American names of Clyde, Pinky, Inky, Blinky, and then there's Sue, who never rides in a vehicle and is always slowly pursuing Pac-Man from behind. Visually, the game is based on the Pac-Man animated series that was airing at the time. The music is the theme from the cartoon, too. The first thing you're going to notice when you try to play Pac-Land is that the controls don't work. Well, not exactly. The arcade Pac-Land, instead it just used 3 buttons. One for each direction, and one for jump. The Famicom version attempts to replicate that. So pressing A moves you to the right, pressing B moves you to the left, and any direction on the control pad makes you jump. There is a secret alternative control scheme though. No, it's not reprogramming your controls in the emulator. If you start the game up, and then pick up the second player controller, the control pad moves Pac-Man, and the buttons make him jump. You can't start the game with the second player controller though, so you'll need to hit the first player start button and then switch. A quirk in Pac-Land is that Pac-Man doesn't get hurt by touching ghosts. He gets hurt by running into them. So Pac-Man can walk on top of ghosts. This applies to any of the large sprites. These spinning logs, you can just walk right on them. Pac-Man has 2 movement speeds. If you just hold down a direction, you walk, but if you double tap a direction and then hold it, you run. Naturally, since this is Pac-Man, there are power pellets. Yeah, those things are supposed to be power pellets. Since there are 5 ghosts, the maximum score you can get for chomping them is 3,200 points. Fruit has a variable score as well. Every piece you pick up rotates through 4 scores. For cherries, this maxes out at 1,000 points. There's also some secret points you can collect. Some actions you take make items fall from the sky that you can grab for extra points. The most challenging of those is waiting until the time runs out. When that happens, Sue rushes in to get Pac-Man, but if you can dodge her, a purple flower is there to be collected. You can also jump over objects that block your path and then push them backwards. That can cause more point items to drop from the sky, or give Pac-Man a helmet that prevents him from being hurt by ghosts dropping things on him. There are no continues in Pac-Land, and you have to score 30,000 points for an extra life. The way scoring scales in this game, that's a pretty high hurdle. However, if you're really ambitious with collecting points, there is a warp zone in the first stage. You have to score 10,000 points in the first stage, and then be at the peak of your jump at the end when Pac-Man freezes. I tried out a few strategies for scoring the 10,000 points and never managed to pull it off. Apparently, the best way is to chomp 5 ghosts and collect 4 cherries in the level. Pac-Land winds up being a pretty brutal game. The ghosts have a bad tendency to swarm, and the jumping winds up being pretty sloppy. On Stage 5 in particular, the platforming is pretty confusing since it isn't really clear at first that you can walk on those brown sections. Ghosts appear at face height in a serial jump, and you'll bonk your head on the top of the screen if you jump too high. The springboards are another problem. You can hit the jump button repeatedly to slow your descent, but their behavior is kind of flaky. No continues means that there's no leeway to try to figure any of this out. Similarly, the air jumping shoes that you get for the return trip wind up feeling kind of unresponsive. There's 4 trips in the Famicom version of Pac-Land. That makes a total of 16 stages. I enjoy Pac-Land, which makes this Famicom port so disappointing. Everything's shrunken down, but they didn't increase the rate of occurrence for things. And that winds up giving the game a very barren feeling. The ghosts never feel right. There's either too few of them, or way too many, or they're placed in ways that are more annoying than fun. Yet, despite the low quality of the port, Pac-Land was a pretty big seller. Pac-Land is Pac-Man's final outing on the Famicom, and it just doesn't live up to his standards.